go to this computer. Today I'm speaking with Pato. Pato grew up in Argentina and studied computer science at the Universidad Tecnológica Nacional in Buenos Aires. After working as a software engineer at various companies in Argentina, Pato moved to Silicon Valley. He joined Relate IQ, which was later acquired by Salesforce, where he served as an engineering director. A year after the acquisition, Pato, together with two co-founders, Trevor and Adil, started Split Software. Split Software focuses on feature management and experimentation, and was acquired by Harness in 2024. Hi, Pato. It's great to have you as a guest.
Hannes, good to speak with you again. It's always a pleasure.
So, first of all, tell me where you grew up.
Well, as you pointed out, I grew up in Argentina, born and raised, very small town in Buenos Aires province called Salto. It's like a small town, 20,000, 25,000 people, 2.5 hours west from Buenos Aires.
Okay, so tell me what's great about the area you grew up in. What do you still remember from your childhood and teenage years?
Oh, what's great. After being here, it does feel like even going back, it's a very small town. But I thought I had everything. I was, I was and I am ha very happy, and being in something a small town, families around, literally walking distance. Um, in a way, it was typical to also small like European towns that everything is around.
Yeah.
Banks, plazas, municipal buildings, schools. It was just a good social place, heavily influenced by like Italian and Spanish and other Eastern European countries immigration. So it was a really good mix of cultures, but at the same time, the typical thing of small town that's not, it's not very cosmopolitan. There's some people generations ago came there and then just brought interesting culture, habits, practices. But I remember it as a happy place where I can go and just go back and disconnect from the craziness of Silicon Valley.
Um, so you study computer science. Do you remember what got you exposed to computers or programming in the first place, and when did that happen?
Yeah, I don't know what the trigger point was. There was again a very, very small rural town,
Yeah.
not many kids, especially like me at the age of 9, were studying programming. Um, but I was into let's call it formal models. I liked electronics and a little music when I was younger. So code and programming is another way of logically express something. Um, and my parents bought me an Intel 386
Hmm.
processor computer, I guess. And I just started messing around with that. And to me, it was magic. It's like telling something what to do and I do it, and it felt really good because I wasn't really playing games. I was just coding, doing stuff. And to me, that was very transformational. It's like, but back then, I said, I want to do something like this later when I grow up. And the rest kind of came naturally from there. Also, I remember very vividly that I had learned how to, at the time, internet later on came as a wireless in town. And I had learned how to kind of read internet traffic and always been very ethical about that. Nothing weird, but it just felt like that was the future. And I think years down the road is proved to be true. But if
What year was that? Like
that
you were
was
nine.
the first computer was in oh gosh, I was 9 years old, so it must have been late 80s.
It is, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, something along those lines. I knew of internet in 94, 95, but
Yeah,
before that, someone introduced me to a BBS. Do you know what BBS was?
yeah, I remember the acronym. Yep.
Yeah, and I remember reading messages in channels like gibberish sometimes because even the phones were not digital, were analog. so there was noise in the communication. It's all weird stuff, but like that's how things worked back then.
So one more question here. How did you pick up programming? I mean, it's not that straightforward. Did you say a 9-year-old gets a 386 and then starts programming? Like what prompted that? Did you actually know that you can program the computer? Or
So
who?
back, yeah, and I believe that it's the same way today. Now it looks better, but you started. I did with Logo. That was a way to instruct a little turtle triangle to do stuff, move
Yep.
around,
Yeah.
and from that, back then it was Microsoft stuff. I used Basic, a quick Basic, so that allowed me to do more sophisticated stuff. Um, like really software that can like read, write, and print and stuff like that. And and then there was a period of time that I kind of didn't touch computers. That was during after at the end of high school, and then obviously at school I picked up C and all the stuff that you see at school. But it was definitely Logo first, and then Basic after. I knew of C from the older kids. One or two older kids have books that said C, C++. I didn't know what that was. I was probably too young. Um, in retrospective, I should have picked up C, but well, that's everything worked out anyway.
Okay, so jumping forward a little bit to California. So you moved to Silicon Valley. What made you move to California in the first place? What prompted that move?
So I graduated in oh the end of oh 05, and I got a. It's very common in Argentina really to get the full-time job 1 year to 2 years before you graduate, and I kind of did both things. I did the full-time school and the job. I did the job first, and then went to school at like 7 p.m. until almost 11 p.m. And in one of those jobs, that's a company that then went public in New York Stock Exchange. So that company was an outsourcing company, and there was an opportunity to go to a customer in Scotland, in Glasgow. So I went there for 5, 6 months, 4 months, and I loved it. It was the first time going abroad just by myself, and they said this is cool. And while I was there, I knew that this company had the very few people at Google that were not just Google full-time employees, but there was the first time at Google was opening up for some contracting work, and that was the company to be. I always wanted to be at Google, so I got my way there through this company. And after coming back from Scotland, and I just loved it here. And I mean, fast forward, I met someone here, I got married, and decided to stay. And from that point and onwards, every job I took, because I always was thinking with new ideas, started one company, didn't know how to do what to do with this, but in the home automation space, long time ago. And it took me, I decided to go to smaller and smaller companies with the idea of learning how to build a company because I didn't know how. And in the companies that you listed, obviously one was cool. I had an amazing time. I learned a bunch of stuff. Um, but then I moved on and went to OpenWave, the company that merged with another company that created the web browsers before the smartphones and the way you know them. And from there, I went to DataStax, that were the company behind Apache Cassandra, a very popular distributed database data store. Um, and from there is when I went to RelateIQ that you mentioned in your introduction. But I go to Google through, a company in Argentina that was had contracting work and
Uh,
a really interesting project, but they were just not. Uh, it was through this company. There was an easy way, especially with like visa potential delays and stuff. I got the transfer from the Argentina to the U.S. institution through this company. So it was an easy process for me.
Got it. Um, what are the biggest similarities between California and Argentina?
Oh, is there any? Um, that's a hard one. I don't. It's a hard one because I always felt like I didn't fit in Argentina. Um, like I took things too seriously. I'm very punctual. Uh, all the things that Argentinians are not. And but then look, I love the weather here. I like the food, the way people treat each other. It's not that we don't have that, but like it just feel like everything was better here. I'm pretty sure if I think a little harder, I would find similarities. Um, the only one I will tell you again is by geography is a lot of landscape and things that I see here in Silicon Valley and
Yeah.
going to wine country. It is very like going to Lake Tahoe is extremely similar to what you can see in the Patagonia region of Argentina, um, which is like a vast region, like almost half the country south. That feels like close to home.
Great. Great. Cool. So let's talk about the company you co-founded, Split Software. Tell me how Split Software got started.
So as you pointed out, I joined very early, like fourth employee or so at Relate IQ. Relate IQ was a smart CRM that at the time it was pretty innovative. Um, Again, if you go back in time where a CRM was a tool in which you had to like manually enter things, prospects that you talk to or exchange email communication, things like that. So we came up with the idea of automatic data capturing. The fact that we had a communication via email or phone call was automatically tracked in the CRM. So it was pretty successful. We raised in several occasions a lot of money. The founders did a really good job, which I'm still in touch with both of them. And we grew pretty rapidly. There's only so many times you can tell. You can say that you double the team, but obviously when you're three, four people, you can double a few times. And there are a few things that happened because of that quick, rapid growth. And one of them was that at some point I found myself and other team members unable to push code to production or even faster because having so many people coding so much without the proper supervision and maybe we didn't do a good job hiring the right management structure. So we really every time we pushed anything to production, we ruined something else.
Hmm.
Like for every feature that we push, we brought back many defects. So customers complain to support complaints to product engineering, and we had to figure something out. So who later became my co-founder, Adel Ejaz, at the time he was part of my team. He proposed, and in his own words, were I think he said, "Let's build an experimentation platform," and I just couldn't associate how that had to do anything with release,
Hmm.
help with release management. But in actuality, what he actually meant to say was, let's build a feature flagging or feature management in today's terminology
Yeah.
project to help. And I'm telling you the words in the way I know it
Because the
today.
category didn't
They were
exist.
not articulated this way before.
Yeah.
But in today's market, I would say what he said, what he meant to say is that let's build a internal tool that allow us to decouple a push from a release so we can push the production more often and release when we are safe to do it and to the right people. Again, they were not, those words were not said to me that way. So my first reaction was this will not solve the problem. So, but he kept trying. At some
Yeah.
point, he convinced me. So we give it a shot. So we built a very rudimentary feature flagging tool inspired by LinkedIn stuff that he came from LinkedIn. And that was transformational because by decoupling pushes from the releases, every engineer knew that pushes were safe. So
Yes.
they can push faster, reduce the time in which feature branches were being held. Therefore, were smaller pieces of code and reviewers could pay more attention to that, increase the quality. I mean, I can't I can speak for like minutes on the benefits of that. And we started releasing those things to us first and then to the sales team and support team and so on, to the point that by the time it got to production, there were almost no defects. And if there were, it wasn't like on off. It was like 1% release or 5% release. It was an issue. Only a few people were exposed to that, luckily. And we always did it in a way that we're exposed to the people that were friendlier to us and that were always willing to get the latest and shiniest features. So it was a win-win for everybody. It was so successful that the CEO talked about that in fundraising round. Employees were required to read that documentation as engineers as part of the onboarding process. Um, and then the company got acquired and spent a year there approximately. And in the back of our heads, we knew there was something there.
So you're
When,
at Salesforce at this point.
yeah, and I just forgot how many months into Salesforce transition, but it was so good and it was so used, and it's like every engineer adopted this terminology of like
Hmm.
feature flag this or let's bake in this feature. And they knew it was safe, so they wanted to use it more and more and more. So by the time I left, because we knew there may be something here, there were like 350 feature flags created, and which at the moment we were reading the news that the budgets for DevOps tools were like increasing every year over year, and it just felt that it was the right moment. That if it was transformational for us with the right set of features and I guess the right interface and the right philosophy around it, we thought we could make this for everybody else's, and we just gave it a shot. There were a few ideas, but that one was the
Yeah.
most interesting to me to pursue.
So maybe you just mentioned it, but to ask explicitly, do you remember the moment when you were certain that you would start Split Software?
Um, the moment was more like a continuum. When Ariel left, he convinced me to go with him, obviously, to start this. We
Yeah.
debated for a little bit because i- is there some is the pool empty? I didn't want to throw myself to an empty pool, but there was a conviction aspect that was very high. It was some signal is
Yeah.
that there's something here. It's because you witness it. You put yourself in the user's feet, which I was,
Hmm?
and it was so important, so transformational that my challenge was like, how can I convince the rest people out there that there is something here, there's a value, even though the category didn't exist. That was kind of crazy. Like I wouldn't do that again, maybe because it was really hard, but that requires a lot of conviction. And the appetite for risk on my end was it's always high, but it was even higher because I
Yeah.
had no kids.
Yeah.
I think I didn't have a house either. Um, I barely had a very low car payment, so I thought to myself, if it doesn't work, I get another job. The market was so hot back then, 2015. So yeah, there was maybe a period of month and a half that I was trying to convince myself, but again, the conviction was very high. And if anything, I was trying to convince myself, why should I not do that? But it was so obvious.
Wow. Okay.
So
So how did you get the investment to start Split?
investment came later. We quit our jobs, built a prototype, some of us, and then we used some of our savings to get some help from at the time a place that will go a little longer. That was Argentina, also leveraging some of my connections. It was really good because the typical is you bring one person, that person knows two more, and then those three together know three more people, and we went from like zero to literally five or seven within a very short period of time. But the first three people plus me and the co-founders gave us enough time, resources, and power to just build basic stuff, but production ready basic stuff. It wasn't throwaway code. And that will allow us to do a pitch to, at the time it was Excel, like friendly to us because they had done multiple related queue rounds and I knew some people there. And that was quick and pretty good. So that really allow us to expedite development and get an office here, hire people here. We moved pretty fast from that point
Interesting.
onward.
I didn't know that you used some of your own money to fund the operation in the beginning. For how long did you do that until you got the capital from Excel?
I think we did it for maybe like 3, 4 months,
Okay.
something like that. I forgot the exact dates, but we again, I didn't have kids, so I spent a lot of time coding in the office was a rental house that I left behind because it all happened at the same time. Like I quit, got a house, left my rental, but I didn't leave it really. Like moved out, but kept paying out of pocket the
Huh?
rental, the monthly payment, and we used that as a temporary office. And we were able to spend a lot of time there, face to face, and make quick decisions and go try them and move on.
So you do this for 3 months and then you get the funding from Excel. Like how quickly did you get the check into your account? Like the first the seed round. Like how quick does that happen? Do you remember?
That's usually pretty quick. Again, if you agree on the terms and everything, you're looking at 2 to 3 weeks, something like that.
Mhm.
Um,
Who helped you with those terms? Like did you Adil and your other co-founder Trevor do this yourself, or did you have help with that?
no, I think usually investors like this are pretty friendly in terms of like seed fund
Mhm.
rounds. They tend to be convertible notes unless you're looking for something extraordinary. Um, again, they do this so often, so they're
I
usually
see.
no normal terms when you don't have a product and you're just building a product and the team. So there wasn't any red flags, and again, we knew the people. All we wanted to do is get the money, any money,
Yeah.
with a littlest effort, so we could go back and keep building, and that's what we did.
Talking about that. So you got some money, or first you had your own money that you used to fund it. Tell me about the first version of Split or the MVP.
I'm trying to remember the word, but you might not remember this. There was a popular, like very simplistic UI framework. I think it was called Bootstrap. I forgot. Uh, but every application looked the same using that. So we were one of them. Built a very simple, like feature flag editor with limited functionality and a kill button that basically listed flags and allowed you to delete it and edit. And in the edit, you could do a rollout and a kill. Potentially, there was a commentary. Oh, it was a change log, but very basic. And we needed, was it one or two? We said let's go with one popular front-end language SDK that was JavaScript, and we picked one for the backend. We were coding in Java, so we said, well, might as well just do in Java. But obviously, we added a few languages a month after that.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but that was it. And I believe I still have some screenshots of that early UI. Um, it was early. It felt early. Now we kind of, when I think about how I pitched customers to use the product with that UI, and a lot of good stuff happened with simple stuff, but it didn't last much. So as soon as we got money, we'll engage with an agency,
Mhm.
a design firm that worked on very prominent product companies out there, and that kind of built a UI that we even got us 9, 10 years after that. Like the archetype of that UI still lived with us of that second iteration.
That's amazing. That's amazing that something lasts that long in the digital world.
Well, there were tweaks, obviously, because
Yeah,
things change and things need to be added, but the basics of that was still there.
cool. So, was there something you had to spend a lot of time on that you didn't expect to ever work on during these 10 years?
But well, a couple of things, but maybe I didn't do it directly, but Adel did, and I helped from the sideline and conceptually. And I wasn't sure it was the right call, but the language for rolling out a feature flag was actually, we developed a formal language for that. Don't ask me why, but instead of being like a typical JSON where you change state, you could use in the same way that you use a programming language or English. It was like some sort of grammar that we created that I can tell you that if you ask a random engineer at Split today, they would not know how to change it. But it was so good that we never had to change it. It allowed for so much flexibility on how to enunciate a feature flag and the logic for percentage um, and I can't think of the word, but like traffic allocation, things like that, that is still there. It was complex because how many times do you actually create a programming language? Because that's what it felt like with a compiler or things like that. We had used a very popular framework for this called Endler. It's very well known, um, and we almost never had to touch that again, surprisingly. Which
Great.
I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but you asked me that question, so I think that I should answer it.
So you worked on Split for 10 years. How did you keep your motivation over 10 years?
I think if you're a founder, you're excited about the space. You find your mind is always racing of how do you grow that and evolve and it's a you're tuned to what's happening in the market so that you don't want to lose a trend. I'm sure we miss a few trends, but it's like time goes by quickly when you're extremely focused on things and want to keep building, iterating. And I was always very intense in when it came to like building a team, hiring people quickly, build and keep in mind what's happening out there. Every time I talk to folks, I always pitch the company, and you'll find it surprising how many customers I found and got myself by just socializing on random occasions with random people that happen to work in tech, and eventually they will need something like this. Uh, but that's where I found the motivation, and as the company grew and we had to delegate responsibilities, I spent time looking at other way of expanding the products in adjacent things and verticals. So that's kind of, and again, when you look back, I cannot believe that 9 years went by so quickly,
Hmm.
but it actually happened.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Um, what's a piece of advice for you that was really valuable? Something that somebody said to you?
I think it was, and things that they said it to me, and I took a mental note. I believe it, but I took a mental note to revisit that, and that was to believe in where what you have convictions on. Because when you have ideas and you're excited about something, it's just easy to get demoralized when someone says, "No, that's not gonna work." But you're sure about this, something tells you that's the right thing to do, even though things out there indicate the opposite. There's a fine line between stubbornness and craziness, right? But I wanted to call it conviction,
Yeah.
and the most valuable thing was to summarize is that as a founder, if you have a conviction, trust in your instinct because you usually know something that someone else doesn't know yet. And in many cases, I did, but in other cases, I let myself go because I forgot that phrase and that advice from others. And in retrospective, I proved myself wrong by not following where I had convictions on.
Wow. That's a beautiful piece of advice. Thanks. Um,
Time is too short. Sometimes you gotta, if you know something well, and if you think that there's something there, uh, there's no shame in trying it out
yeah.
longer.
Do you remember the decisions that were really impactful or changed the trajectory of the company?
So multiple. Some of them are a little technical, but that's what comes to mind right now. Um, in any order. um, culture was important to us, and we were a diverse set of founders, and we knew. So we invested very early on in culture. And when you say culture, you can have different answers, but for us was even hiring early people to spend time on what we call a people team, and aspects of the culture that to us implied get-togethers and gatherings, and have fun and make the daily job at the office entertaining. And I hear from many people, like, even like yourself, like how much they enjoyed spending time at the company. Sometimes I didn't notice because my mind was busy racing on what's the next big thing and what's going on out there. But I think that the testament of that is that a lot of people stay for many, many, many years, like triple or quadruple the national average of tenure at the job. Um, Second, I would say very early stage when the company was five, six people, like the amount of attention to detail that we spend on the core elements of the architecture, in our case, would be the grammar for feature flags and the infrastructure for serving at scale in the hypothetical case that the company will survive year two or year three. I don't think it was touched or revisited on a major degree at all. And that's just the consequence for me of hitting your head against the wall on the whiteboard a lot, doing what today I would call you that would be like a pre-mortem. It's how what would you do if this go wrong? Like designing for that. So obviously the consequence of that is you move a little slower, but who cares? We had no customers at the beginning. I knew I didn't want to revisit architecture so many times. There were other decisions that we had to like redo multiple times, but the core piece did not. And I feel I need to give you a third one, but
Hey, you don't have to, but I mean, if one comes up,
okay, if it comes up, I'll mention it. Those are the two that I remember vividly that were good and stayed with us for a long time.
yeah. And I want to play that back to you. I mean, I've been with Split for almost 4 years now, and uh, it had really a great culture. I really thoroughly appreciate the culture you and Trevor and Adil built up, and yeah, it really made going to work fun and exciting and challenging, and that really makes a difference. Okay, so tell me about your first paying customer. How was that?
The first paying customer, I don't want to say a name,
Yeah, that's fine.
but I remember, I don't know if I was there or my co-founder was there, that pitching, because sometimes when you tell the story multiple times, you just get confused of how it actually happened. But um, I think we were pitching the features, and at some point, this customer looked at us and he said, "Are we the first customer in production, aren't we?" And I think there was a silence, and then we may have agreed or say yes to that. But look, someone's going to be the first one at some point.
Yeah.
Um, and it just felt good, and also kind of raised the bar. And some glitches happened there, but that was a moment, obviously, in a company's life when it adds value to everything you build. To me, it felt like a small graduation in between, like primary school, maybe primary to middle school equivalents, because now things were real, and mentally you gotta maybe shift a little bit how you do things, because it was a critical software, someone uptime depending on you, and you have to graduate quickly. So now, okay, now we have to have like on call schedule and
Mhm.
responsibilities, and it's like weekends are different. But it did feel like a graduation, an accomplishment, and obviously many customers join along the journey after that.
Do you remember how long it took you to get your first customer from the very, from those first three months where you were bankrolling the operation yourself on?
Yeah, again, I don't remember exactly, but from the
Roughly.
moment I let's say I signed my employment agreement of my own company, I think it must have been about 7 months. maybe
Okay.
8 months in, maybe earlier. Again, it was very simple product, simplicity. I mean, we built with simplicity in mind, and things became more complex from that point. But there wasn't a lot of surface area. We had to do two things well. One is never be down, and two, make it very simple for engineers to integrate their code with our SDKs to use feature flags.
When did you personally think Split would succeed?
What I remember thinking, how are we gonna make a single dollar out of this? Even though I knew how valuable it was for us at the prior company, the idea of a feature flag tool, um, even when we got the first, second, third customer, I didn't think we were gonna succeed yet. That doesn't mean that I didn't have expectations. Also, they were founders-led deals, so they're not very high deals. So again, if you ask me how are we gonna make the first million, it was really hard. Um, but I think probably year one, 1.5, when we started seeing a little more traction, the category didn't exist yet. I found myself explaining what feature flag was, and I remember very vividly hearing feature what, and it was a moment in time when it became a category. People knew what feature flags were and the value. So it's like when I didn't have to pitch the value of feature flag, that moment, I thought to myself, okay, we have something here. This will grow. And I knew it wasn't just feature flag alone. We had to build other stuff to it. But that was a moment in time that it's like the industry caught up and there was something here.
How did raising money change over the years?
So we've been, I would say, long enough to see few inflection points. We went from a 2015 easy to raise money, like Series A, Series B, even seed, where pretty much by the team, and Series B won by accomplishment. Um, then COVID hit, and we had a moment, not just us, like anybody else. But I remember I thought that was it because that was approaching Series C, and we were also in the middle of CEO transition, and investors didn't know what their standing was in terms of giving capital or not at month two of COVID. To put yourself in March, April 2020, that is when we went on to raise Series C very unsuccessfully. And we just had to go back, do some cost reduction, some stuff there, and then back again. I think we successfully did a Series C round in August of must have been 2020. But if any moment in life of the company, I thought that would be the end. It was in 2020 until we closed around. Then we had to show a lot from Series C to Series D. That was our last round. We had to show a lot of traction, a lot of like anybody would do at Series C,
Mhm.
efficiency, some transitions within the company. You know, at the moment we were the pitch of a platform that has experimentation and feature flags was resonating. But Series C was really hard. Series D was a little easier. Not easy, but easier. Um, but the Series C 2020 was like a moment of funding scarcity, as I recall it. I remember it.
Um, what is the one thing that you would do completely differently the second time you start a company?
Hmm. Look, I thought we were brutal, for lack of a better term, at making decisions. I don't think we were. I would be extremely hyper focused on market fit and growth as soon as possible. That means I will spend, if I were to do a next one, even before building a company, I would spend a lot of time validating an idea and making sure that I have maybe a good business partners out there that are willing to try something if I were to build it that would do differently. And making sure that maybe a category exists and trying to transform it. We didn't do that. We tried to invent a category or expect that the category will exist down the road. And it's not impossible. We did it. It was extremely hard. And you pay other financial consequences of doing that.
How aware of your competition were you when you started Split?
Completely unaware, literally. We knew very little, and in fact, you would laugh at this. I didn't know that what we were building were called feature taggles or feature flags.
Yeah.
Um, that came later, and then we found one competitor along the journey, and it became much bigger. And then few tools that would do an okay job, like on and off job on feature flags on a per single language perspective. Um, but then obviously experimentation came along, and we were always criticized for, are you a feature flag or experimentation? And we said no, it's a whole thing, it's a continuum. We had a hard time on explaining that. In the end, we were right. There were not necessarily two companies, because experimentation companies added, I don't want to say names, but they added feature flags, and feature flag companies added add-on experimentation. We thought of that as a one thing at the beginning and stood by it.
Beautiful. And that marks the end of our interview. Well, thank you very much for sharing your experience and your thoughts. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Of course, it took me through a memory lane, and it made me hesitate on some answers to remember if they were right or not. Those thoughts I had back in time, but it was always fun to go back in time and revisit some decisions and revive good memories or bad memories, who knows. But thank you again for giving me the space and the time.
Always.